Welcome to this Racing Post Bloodstock Postcast. I'm Martin Stevens, and I have with me today a special guest, Bloodstock agent Matt Coleman, who works for the Stroud Coleman Bloodstock Agency with the legendary Anthony Stroud. You're here to speak about Cheltenham because you have a few live candidates, not least Global Citizen and the Champion Hurdle, who you bought, and also to speak about some other industry issues too. So let's start off, because Bloodstock agent is sort of a role that many people, young people, aspire to because they think it's glamorous. Is it all it's cracked up to be? What do you do?
Hi Martin, nice to see you. Yeah, I mean, I guess it can be glamorous at times, but it is a lot of hard work, a lot of travel, and I think it's telling there's not that many Bloodstock agents in the UK and Ireland, and the reason for that is the market we're working in is somewhat finite, and it's not easy to get clients, and the economics of our industry are very much tailored towards people with money, and it's just not that easy to get clients. But no, I'm lucky. I've been working with Anthony for 12 years now, since I did the Darley Flying Start, and I was lucky enough to start as an assistant to Anthony 12 years ago, and I've just worked my way up from there. So we work together. We're business partners. We have two girls in the office that help us, but in terms of the agency, it's just Anthony and I. So we do everything from flat racing, jump racing, buying foals, broodmares. We'd act as racing manager for a few different people, help out and help with stud farms. So it's a wide-ranging, fascinating job, but it is busy and hard work. So.
And is it a job that you'd recommend to young people? And if so, how would you tell them to get into it?
And I love it. I mean, I've always been a racing and pedigree fan. It's where my passion is, and so I'm lucky enough to work in the industry that I love. Would I recommend it? Yes. Is it easy to get into? No. I mean, I often help young people. I encourage people to come around with me at the sales. I do as much as I can to try and help people. But it's, as I said, there are a finite number of clients out there, and I think it's something you can aspire to. I think you probably need to get a lot of experience in the industry, be it through a national stud course, an Irish national stud course. Darley Flying Start I did is fantastic. I did the BHA graduate program straight out of university. I think doing some travel is fantastic before you sort of go to America, Australia, South Africa, wherever you can get more and more experience in all aspects of the industry. I think a lot of Bloodstock agents have sort of rather fallen into it rather than particularly said, I want to be a Bloodstock agent. The ideal way to get into it is to work as an assistant to a Bloodstock agent, but there are very few jobs, and I was lucky that Anthony needed someone 12 years ago when I finished Darley Flying Start. But we'd love to employ more people, but the economics of it, there's a finite number of people who you can employ. So.
Okay, so let's talk about some of your successes you've had so far. Start off just because she's a nice story. Melbourne Memories, who you said was one of the first, the Dam of Melbourne Memories was one of the first horses you purchased after you'd finished the Flying Start course.
Yes, I mean, that's a personal story rather than a sort of a career story, but when I finished Darley Flying Start, Dad had just retired, and he always wanted to have a broodmare. So I was working with Anthony, and Darley had a raft of fillies that they were selling who were coming back from the Dubai Carnival at Nad Al Sheba that year. I think it was 2007, 2008 maybe. And so I sifted through all these pedigrees that arrived on our fax machine, and I liked her pedigree. She'd been fourth in a listed race, fourth in the Emperor Stakes at Newmarket, and was a winner. She was by Invincible Spirit. She had no pedigree. And so she arrived off the plane. I went to see her, and I liked her. So they wanted 5,000 for her, so we bought her. I was very low on funds, having just finished Flying Start. So we got a deal on Sleeping Indian from David Redvers at Tween Hills. Put her in foal to Sleeping Indian, and we got a filly foal who was tiny, couldn't do much with her in terms of commerciality, so we sent her to Ascot Sales, brought her back in, and sent her off to Clive Cox. And I just said to Clive, see what you can do, we don't want to pay training fees forever if she's no good. And he called me up one day, sort of July time, and said, that filly you sent me, she's pretty good, Matt. She just did a very good piece of work. So she was third at Sandown in a very hot maiden, first time out behind Winning Express, that ended up being placed in a 1,000 guineas. And she won next start. And then because she'd been through Ascot Sales, she qualified for the Brightwell Sales race. Yeah. Brightwell Sales in those days owned Ascot Sales. So we sent her off there to Ascot. She was, I think, certainly 20-1 or bigger against a load of colts, and we just sort of threw her in, and she managed to win it. So that was fantastic. And then we thought, well, there's one listed race left, the Sham at Newmarket. So we threw her into that, and she won that, beating Godolphin and everybody. And then she came back the following season, was third in the Fred Darling, was seventh in the French 1,000 Guineas. So she's been a phenomenal story for Dad and I. And we still own the mother, and we own Melbourne and a couple of the sisters. And since then, we've been fortunate to sell a number of six-figure yearlings out of the mother, and Melbourne Memory's first yearling made 230,000. So it's been, it's a once in a lifetime. You buy a mare for 5,000 and you end up with not only a great racehorse and some unbelievable memories, but also financially we've done very well out of it. So it's been.
You have the showcasing filly out of Melbourne Memories to go to war with this year. Yes,
we have the showcasing 2-year-old. Actually, we have the Mukadram 3-year-old as well, who's big and backward and hasn't run yet. But we sold the first one well, so we decided to keep the next two. The showcasing, very much like Melbourne, small, racy, and should hopefully be an early 2-year-old this season. So we'll see how she gets on.
With the trainer, or?
Yeah, she's going to go to Richard Spencer in Newmarket.
Oh, good.
So yeah, she's just gone there last week. So we'll, and the Mukadram's with Amy Murphy in Newmarket. So we'll see how they get on. Yeah.
So back to some more serious business for clients. You've had a very good relationship with the Cool Silk partnership over the years. You've bought horses such as Sands of Marley, Prince of Lear, Cody Anna, Dark Anna, and Charming Kid. How did that start with the Cool Silk partnership?
Peter and Corin Swan and their son Chris, and also Corin's mother Barbara Wilkinson are the family behind the Cool Silk partnership. I met them through James Given, who I buy some horses with in Lincolnshire, and I've been very lucky, and they've been wonderfully supportive of me. They've given me a lot of opportunity in terms of having the chance to buy some nice horses for them, and we've been fortunate. We managed to buy Prince of Lear at the Breeze Ups, who we bought at Doncaster Breeze Ups 3 or 4 years ago by Kodiak, and 2 months later he won the Norfolk at Royal Ascot, which was fantastic. It was one of Peter and Corin's ambitions to have a Royal Ascot winner is for everybody, so that was fantastic to be able to provide them with that. Cody Anna and Dark Anna are two half sisters. I actually bought the mother called Jadana, was one of the first horses I bought them, who James Given got black type with. I sold her to Noel O'Callaghan, who's another client of mine at Mount Armstrong, Southern Ireland, and we've actually bought the first 2 yearlings, a Kodiak, a Dark Angel, Dark Anna, and a Kodiak, Cody Anna, and they've both got black type. And we've sold both of those for a good profit at the December sales in Newmarket. And then the sort of star of the show is Sands of Marley, who we bought at Ascot Breeze Ups 2 years ago. I mean, he's just been a phenomenal horse. He's a son of Panis, who, when I bought him, I'm sure, several people said to me, I must be mad giving that for a Panis, but he just breathes fantastically well. I bought Prince of Lear and Sands of Marley off Con Monan, Banshee House Stables, and he's been a lucky vendor for me. He does a great job with the horses. And Sands of Marley just breathes fantastic. Peter was there with me and Corin was there, and we all universally agreed that this horse was the best breezer of the day, the one we wanted, so we bought him. Sent him up to Richard Fahey, and Richard called me before he ever ran and said this horse is seriously special. I mean, he had Ribchester in the yard, and he was talking in those sort of terms of him before he ran. He managed to get well beaten first time out, but he went to Nottingham second time and won 5 or 6 lengths easily. And Irene was second to him, who went on to win a stakes race next start, so we knew he was pretty good. And Richard was very bullish going into the Gimcrack, and he won the Gimcrack well. He's had a couple of blips on the way, but he's now a dual Group 2 winner, and in the icing, he just probably should have won the Commonwealth Cup, was a bit unfortunate in running. And he came back with a bang at the end of the season and won the champion sprint, so that was fantastic.
And now you said he might have some quite interesting international targets ahead of him. Yeah,
the plan is the Al Quoz Sprint in Dubai in 3 or 4 weeks' time, so we're all going out to watch him there. Then, all being well, he'll come back and go for the Golden Jubilee at Royal Ascot, and if that goes well, the plan is to go to the Everest in Sydney. He's a horse that thrives on soft ground, and that race so far, I think I'm saying every year, has been running on soft ground. When he went to the Breeders' Cup, he enjoyed the travel, so we're hopeful the travel works, and he's just a fantastic project for him. We sold half of him to Phoenix Thoroughbreds after the Ascot win on the Champions Day, so he'll run in partnership with Phoenix, and they're obviously keen on the international program. So that's the tentative plan. Obviously, things need to go right between now and then, but that's the dream.
And then going on to some of the jumpers you've bought, we'll talk more about Global Citizen later. There's a few other good horses you bought for those for the owner of Global Citizen, the Megsons. You have Nadetak, who won the River Don very easily in January. The Captain's Inn, who won at Leicester very well a few weeks ago. So very good clients to have. And
Andrew and Jane Megson and their daughters are wonderful people. They've been very supportive of me. I actually met them through John Joe and Jackie O'Neill, and we bought Global Citizen for them, who's obviously going for the champion. Won the trial at Haydock impressively and goes to the champion hurdle next week. Look, he needs to step up, but he's a very, very talented horse. He's, I think, rated 159 or 160, so he has 12 or 14 pounds probably to find to compete with the likes of Bouvedere and Apple's Jade. But if he gets the run of the race, and he's a very free-going horse, and he's often had to make his own running. And hopefully next week, there's be plenty of pace on, and David Bass can just sit him in behind the leaders, get him a toe. He's an absolutely magnificent jumper, and if he gets in a rhythm and the grounds, hopefully don't get too much rain, the ground's not too soft, I think he can run very well. Whether he's good enough to hustle up the big guns, I don't know, we'll find out. But he's a horse with an enormous amount of ability. He's very athletic, great looking horse, and he's a fantastic jumper. I think his day in the sun might be the Racing Post Arkle in 12 months' time. I really think he could be a sensational chaser. He'll probably be the highest rated, I would think, the highest rated horse in the Arkle next year if he gets there. And he's a very, very good jumper. So that's our sort of long-term dream. But we'll have a go at the champion hurdle next week and see what happens.
And he's another one who's by a slightly less well-known sire in Alcardem, who you did the deal for, I think.
Yeah, well, I did correct you. One of the first horses I bought when I started as a Bloodstock agent was Alcardem as a sire. I bought him off Shadwell for William Murphy down in the southeast of Ireland. So it was funny how things sort of in life go around in circles. I bought Alcardem, and then I think it must have been 8 or 10 years later. I've spoken to William Murphy lots in the intervening period, but I never bought a horse off him. And he called me up after Global Citizen won his point to point and just said to me, "Matt, I've got this horse. I just think he's very, very special." And he went to the Cheltenham sale, and Andrew and Jane Megson were very kind enough to let me buy him for them. He's a brother to two good horses, De Plotting Shed and A Hare's Breath, who William Murphy had in their pointing career as well. And he just said to me, this horse is just completely different gear to those two. And they're both, I think, rated sort of in the 140s. And so, I like William. He's a very honest, great guy. And I took his word, and he won very impressive in his point to point. He beat some moderate horses, but he was very impressive doing it. And look, the horse made a lot of money at the sales, but he's, luckily come good. And in the Diatak I bought for the Megsons as well, he won the River Don 22 lengths. He probably won't go for the Albert Bartlett. He'd probably be better on a flat track, so we'll probably send him to the Grade 1 Sefton at Aintree. And the captain's in, their other horse, will probably run again between now and Aintree, and then all being well, we'll go for the Grade 1 2.5 mile hurdle there as well. So they could have an exciting Aintree, hopefully. So.
And another trainer you've been doing very well for with slightly cheaper purchases is Noel Williams.
Yeah, Noel and I have been lucky together. I actually enjoy working with these sort of young up-and-coming trainers, both flat and jump. On the flat, I've worked with the likes of Harry Dunlop and Amy Murphy. And over jumps, Noel Williams and Neil King and Amy Murphy again, and Tom Lacey. And I enjoy working with these trainers that are progressing. We work together to build the business beneficial for all of us, and hopefully we get good results. Noel Williams and I, who you referred to, we've bought some cheap stores. We often go to these store sales. The lesser store sales, maybe the August sale at Tadsall's Island is where we've done a lot of our good buying. And we bought horses like another Crick, who might run in the Close Brothers on Tuesday if he gets in. We bought him for 9,000. We bought Sensilano, who's been multiple black type this year. She's won at Ascot and at Cheltenham. Bought her for 14,000 euros, I think. We bought a horse called Breaking Waves, who is a half-brother to OK Corral. He won a novice hurdle well at Huntingdon recently, and he should hopefully be a graded chaser next season. He is a horse to look forward to. He cost 30,000 euros, and what could be the best cost 3,000, a horse called Calanita, who probably people haven't heard of, but he won a Fontwell bumper last season. Itchy Feet was second, who ran in the Supreme Novices, and a horse of Paul Nicholls is called Flick or Voyou was fourth, and he's won 2 bumpers since. I think the form's very good. Unfortunately, Calanita got an injury the start of this season, so he's out for the year, but he'll be back next season, and he's a horse to keep an eye out for, because I think he's a potentially very exciting horse. He only cost 3,000. So.
Yeah. So we've shown there that you've bought good horses from the very top boutique jumps horses and training sales right down to the lesser, more cheaper sales. So in the second section, we'll come back and talk more about some sales issues. If you
you want the best possible chance of finding the winners at the 2019 Cheltenham Festival, you need this. Hot off the press, the brilliant Racing Post Cheltenham Festival Guide. 208 pages packed with fantastic information. Paul Keeley's race by race verdict, trainer profiles. We've got the view from the odds makers, big race forums, and so much more, including ratings from Racing Post ratings, top speed, and loads more expert advice. It costs just £12.99 and you can get your copy from racingpost.com/shop.
Okay, welcome back to part 2 of this special Racing Post Bloodstock Postcast. Still myself, Martin Stevens, Bloodstock agent Matt Coleman, and now we're joined by James Thomas, also from the Racing Post Bloodstock desk. I'm just going to talk about some of the issues around sales at the moment. So we were saying there that you've bought horses from sort of all sorts of sales at every level of the market. With the Breeze Ups on the horizon, you've obviously bought horses like Sands of Marley and Robin of Navan from Breeze Ups. Do you go by timing?
I do. I go a lot on my eye as well. I mean, I'm probably fairly old school in that I still use a stopwatch. I have a flag person at the 2 furlong pole, and I have a stopwatch, and I have my eye. I also have access to some electronic times, but I would go. The reason I use a stopwatch is because when the horses breeze, I get a visual interpretation or visual impression of what I think of the horse. The stopwatch instantaneously tells me what sort of time he's done. It's obviously not exactly correct compared to the electronics, but I like to make that initial assessment of the horse, the way he moves, the way he behaved in the breeze, the way he gallops out, and what the time was. If you simply rely on the electronics, they don't get published until after the breeze, and you have to wait until the paperwork comes back, and then you have to then put that against your comments, and it's just a time thing. If you've got to go and look at 150 horses on the sales ground, I like just to have made an initial impression, look at the stopwatch, and make a note on the horse. And then you go and look at the horse, you look at the pedigree. Vendor is very important. I've had a lot of success, as I said to you in the first part, of Bancher House Stables and some other vendors that...
Con doesn't believe in timing the horses, or at least drilling them.
Yeah, I mean, the trick of buying breeze ups and the trick of producing breeze ups is getting the horse to breeze well enough to look good and breeze well, but the horse has to have a future. There's lots of horses whose derby day is at the breeze up track, and that's no good for anybody. So, I would... migrate towards certain vendors, but I would very much have an open mind and go horse by horse. I've bought horses that were very much off the radar. I mean, Sands of Marley, he's by Panis, Robin of Navan was by American Post. So you have to tailor your views to the budget you've got to spend. I mean, when Harry Dunlop and I bought Robin of Navan, we had €50,000 to buy a horse in Arcana, which is a very prestigious breeze up sale. We had to think outside the box. So when we bought him, he was a tall, narrow horse, but he moved very well. His time wasn't particularly good, but he was by American Post, and there was 2 other stakes-winning American Posts in the pedigree. So that pedigree gave me an idea that this horse had a chance of being good. He was a very athletic horse, and he moved well, and we got lucky. So.
James, you report from a lot of the breeze up sales. Do you think that there's been a slight backlash towards or at least some resistance towards the ultra timing of sales and worrying about the times?
There's probably been resistance from vendors, but I don't think it'd be fair to say there's been resistance from buyers. I think the whole premise of a breeze up is that it's another layer of evidence for buyers on which to base their judgment, and having the times there is a big factor. I don't know how much, whether you could break it down into a sort of how much you attribute to times, or whether would that be a sort of case by case basis? Or?
Yeah, it's a horse by horse basis. I mean, also it's budget dependent.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you've, for example, Peter and Corin Swan, Barbara Wilkinson, the Cool Silk, they like to buy fast early horses, and they're happy to spend a decent budget. So therefore, I'm able to buy horses that have breezed very fast. If you're buying for a less, someone with a smaller budget, you can't buy the fast times, so you have to find another angle in.
Yeah.
The times is one very important angle. The skill from our perspective is trying to decipher what horse has done a fast time because he's drilled for that day, and what horse has done a fast time because he's very talented.
Yeah.
Prince of Lear did a very good time, Sands of Mali did a very good time, Robin of Navan did no time.
Yeah.
So it's not an exact science, and you get to learn the vendors that are able to get them to breeze well without drilling them. Yeah, and that's the key.
Do we think sales companies should publish for times like they do in America?
I don't have a strong opinion. Most people have the times nowadays. I think it's already enough time orientated. I think if you're going to start publishing the times on websites, in the Racing Post, in the sales companies' publications, I don't know if it just puts too much emphasis on the timing, but...
No, I'd slightly disagree in that I think that the sales companies and the breeze up vendors should trust buyers and agents and trainers and owners to use that timing as part of the artillery for all the other considerations like you were saying. And I think in the spirit of openness and everything being based more on information, I'd like to see them published, but...
Well, I was going to say, there's some argument, isn't there? There's so many different people take their own times that actually there is no one set thing, is there? The sort of spread of evidence is slightly different, sort of person to person, depending on where they've set one trap up, or, I know some people are very keen on timing run-outs, and, it's not just a bare 2 furlongs. So I suppose it depends, again, what you're after, what you're hoping to achieve.
Yes, I mean, I don't have a strong... I don't think it would have a huge effect whether they're published or not. Probably from an owner or the buyer perspective of someone that's not at the sale, it probably would be useful. But then, as you say, certain agents would time in different ways. You see when the electronic timing mechanisms, they're actually in different... Some of them are in different places, especially on the gallop out, so people might use different times in different ways, but... I don't have a strong opinion about whether they should be published or not. I don't think it's going to make a huge amount of difference. I just don't want horses to be drilled just to do a time.
No.
But, yeah.
Would you be interested in going one step further and looking at things like stride measurements or strides per second? Is that something you ever...
Yes, that's something we look at. Some of our trainers that we buy for, Anthony buys with Simon Crisford, and Simon, for example, is very interested in all the figures and works with James Willoughby and some other people analysing time, stride length, and then factors that into pedigree, and uses a lot of different tools. And Simon's been very successful buying breeze up horses with us. So we had a winner in Dubai the other day, Sporting Chance, who came from Ascot breeze ups last year. So I think the more information, the better, is my view. It's up to the agent, trainer, or buyer how they use that information. But I'm a big information man, and whether it's form, pedigree, stride length, times, I like as much information as possible.
Yeah.
The next issue with breeze ups was we saw last year there was massive oversupply, and possibly the breeze ups were being used as a second chance saloon for horses who hadn't sold as yearlings, which sort of diluted the quality somewhat. Are you expecting and hoping the companies to tighten up numbers this year?
I think they have. I mean, Ascot, Tattersall's Island at Ascot, they've only got, I think, 90 horses. Goffs UK at Doncaster have got 160. And we all saw last year there was too many moderate horses in the breeze up sales. Of course, the breeze ups is a second chance to sell a yearling that didn't sell, but we all want quality. And I don't think there isn't a market for a moderate horse. If it was a horrible yearling and it breezes slow, there wasn't anyone to buy it as a yearling. If it breezes slow, there's still no one to buy it. And actually, even if a horse breezes quite fast, but is very ordinary to look at, or has absolutely no pedigree, there's still a limited market for it. So I think from foals, yearlings, breeze ups, I think better quality physical specimens, better quality pedigrees are essential.
And you'll be reporting on the sales this spring. What are you expecting the market to be like?
I think, to be honest, it will be a similar story to last year in terms of numbers sold. Because actually, if you look at last year and the year before, the number of horses sold didn't really change that much. It was just the catalogue size went up. I think with smaller catalogues, clearance rates will be shored up, aggregates will be down just because of the raw number of horses, and average and medians should tighten up and sort of be a bit stronger than they were last year, I'd imagine. I mean, the results, as you say, horses like Sporting Chance and Sands of Mali have proved the results are good, so I can't see why buyers would be moving away from the good horses there.
And certainly, from our perspective, we have a number of owners and trainers that do like buying breeze up horses. So I think there'll be good demand. The likes of Anthony obviously works closely with Godolphin. I'm sure they'll be buying a few breezers, and that will then filters down all through the market. And from our perspective, we do have certain owners and trainers that would do like to buy breeze up horses. They like to see the more than just a yearling walking up and down, and I think that does appeal to certain owners, and they have proven results every year. There's very good horses out of the breeze up sales, and they can come from any of the breeze up sales. I mean, Sands of Marley and Sporting Chance came from Ascot, who everyone thinks is sort of the lesser of the breeze up sales, but they're two very good horses, and obviously some of the big money horses, Tattersalls, Craven, have gone on to do fantastic things as well. So a good one can come from anywhere.
And the other sales which are coming up, there's obviously another Cheltenham Festival sale next week, and you bought Global Citizen from a Tats Cheltenham sale for £275,000. We were talking before, why can't that success of the Cheltenham sale and the Aintree sale, why can't that be replicated on the flat as much?
I don't really know. I mean, I was at I've been to the last few Royal Ascot sales, the Glorious Goodwood sale. They just don't seem to work quite as well on the flat as they do over jumps. The sales at Cheltenham, at Aintree, at Punchestown have worked fantastically well and have not only produced some very good horses, but the market's been very, very strong. Maybe it's slightly because of the demographic of the ownership base. A lot of the National Hunt owners would probably be more race goers, fans, and therefore they're at the races, their blood's up. They might have had a runner on the day, and then there's some very smart horses coming in the evening for them to try and buy. The flat sales, a lot of the good flat horses aren't for sale. So, for example, pre-Royal Ascot, it's very hard to get the best horses from Ascot week in the sale. I mean, in fairness, the ones that have gone in that have been good have made a lot of money, but the slightly lesser horses have probably struggled, and the market is quite thin. I think the idea of the boutique racecourse sale works very well. Some agents, me included, and some of the trainers, it's quite hard work during racing to be trying to. You've got runners, you've got things going on, to actually work the sale at the same time. It's not easy, but it makes a lot of sense, especially at these big jumps fixtures, to have these sales, and they work very well.
An easy one to end this section on. The lower and middle market of sales is a bad malaise in the market. How do we solve it? What we're going to do?
I'll give James that one.
Well, I mean, there is no silver bullet really, is there? But I suppose the obvious starting point is the prize money situation. I think broadly speaking, owners can be confident's the wrong word, but once there's a sort of realistic chance of being able to recoup some of your expenditure, I don't think anyone goes to sales or not the majority at least, expecting to make money. But as I say, if there is a chance there from winning races, I've been able to cover costs of training fees, I've not been able to just set fire to a pile of money by having horses in training. That's probably a reasonable starting point. And as you said about demand for moderate horses, there just isn't there, is it? When you look at yearling sale catalogues and foal sale catalogues and breed up catalogues, and there's horses there with average pedigrees or physical specimens that don't really stand up. When there's so many of these horses about, why would people gravitate towards the ones with obvious flaws?
I mean, I'm a big believer in things like the Book One bonus. The Tattersalls Craven sale this year has a £15,000 bonus for horses, I think, that win a Class 4 maiden or better. And I think those sort of bonuses, I mean, the sales races are great, and everyone, if you win the Weatherby Super Sprint or one of the sales races, you can win a lot of money, but that's only one horse. I think the bonuses that are smaller work very well, because if I buy a horse for, say, 30 or 40,000 at a sale, and you can win 10 or 15,000 for winning one race, I think that's a huge incentive for people to buy at the lower market. Yeah. We need more end users. There's lots of people in the industry trading horses, buying foals, buying yearlings to breeze. There's no shortage of people trying to trade, but there's a lack of end users, especially at the middle to bottom level, and that's where we need to try. Because we as agents need people that want to race horses. It's fine having people buying and selling, but we need end users who want to enjoy having horses and training. But I think with the prize money situation so dire in the UK, especially at the lower end, we need to give people incentives and a realistic goal of achieving some sort of return on their expenditure. And I think those sort of bonuses work extremely well. The Craven, for example, has been almost a boutique sale. The top horse have made a lot of money. The bottom third have been very difficult to sell. So I think the £15,000 bonus will be great for me as an agent to be able to ring a trainer and owner and say, this horse is going to make between 30 and 50,000. I like him. I think we can buy him, and you're going to get 15,000 if we win one race on top. On top of prize money, on top. If he's plus 10 bonus as well, you can get 25,000 for winning one race. And I think that is a huge incentive, and I'd love to see more sales companies doing those kind of bonuses, because it's the sales races are great, but only one horse can win that. I think when there's a bonus scheme and you've got a real realistic chance of winning it, it's not pie in the sky. I think they're a real help.
Yeah. So that's sales sorted. We'll come back in the third section, talk more about Cheltenham and maybe Global Citizen's chances in the Champion Hurdle and a few other industry issues.
If you want the best possible chance of finding the winners at the 2019 Cheltenham Festival, you need this. Hot off the press, the brilliant Racing Post Cheltenham Festival Guide. 208 pages packed with fantastic information. Paul Keeley's race-by-race verdict, trainer profiles. We've got the view from the odds makers, big race forums, and so much more, including ratings from Racing Post ratings, top speed, and loads more expert advice. It costs just £12.99, and you can get your copy from racingpost.com/shop.
Okay, welcome back to the third part of this Racing Post Bloodstock Postcast. We still have Matt Coleman here, Bloodstock agent, and James Thomas from the Racing Post Bloodstock desk, and I'm Martin Stevens from the Racing Post. We're just going to talk about Cheltenham now. Global Citizen you have in the Champion Hurdle, and you've said a little bit there about how, if he's on a best day and maybe some of the others are on a worse a day, then he might just have a squeak. You also have a really, really popular horse who you bought in Lil Rockefeller, who obviously nearly won it looks like he might win the Stayers Hurdle there a few years ago, and he's back in the race this year.
Yeah, that's the plan. Look, he's been a phenomenal horse. Neil King and I bought him together at Doncaster Sales, I think it was 2012 maybe, a few years ago. It's an interesting story. He was bought by Roger O'Callaghan of Tally-Ho Stud in Keeneland as a yearling to bring over to the Breeze Ups over here. Roger couldn't sell him, so he leased him to Midland Park Racing, put him in training with Richard Hannon, and he was a 2 and 3 year old on the flat with Richard Hannon. I think he just won an amateur riders handicap at Newbury before I bought him, but he was very tricky in the starting stalls, and I think he was down to his last warning and needed a stalls test. So that obviously put off a lot of the flat guys, and Roger said to me, I do quite a lot of work with Tally-Ho Stud, and Roger said to me that if the horse had to make 30,000, otherwise Midland Park were going to buy him off Roger and send him jumping. So they bid 30,000 and I bid 31, and we bought him. Neil actually, surprisingly, found him very hard to sell to an owner. He was by hard spun. I guess he was a slightly off the wall kind of selection for a jumps horse, but he's the most beautiful horse. I mean, he's a big. Actually, a lot of people think he's small, but actually, if you see him at the race, he's actually a big, strong horse. And he just looked like a jumper. I actually looked at him initially to buy him to go jump racing in America. I buy horses with Sean Clancy in America, but Sean couldn't get anyone interested. So I looked at him and I put him up to a few other National Hunt trainers I buy from. They all said no, because his pedigree was understandably fairly off the wall. He's by hard spun out of a Mount Livermore mare. But Neil came to the sale, saw him and loved him, and so we bought him. And look, he's just been a phenomenal horse. He's actually very quirky when we got him home firstly. He didn't really take to jumping straight away, but Neil's done a fantastic job with him. When Neil trains on the downs there, I think has kept him sweet, and he's just become a phenomenal hurdler. He's got a most concrete temperament, and he saw what he did at Glorious Goodwood last year. He went back on the flat, and he's won a number of grade 2s and grade 3s over hurdles. He was second in the Stayers Hurdle, just pipped by Nichols Canyon, broke our hearts up the hill. Yeah. But he's been a phenomenal horse, and he pretty much every day he turns up, runs his race, and he's going to run in the Stayers Hurdle. He'll need. We're going there hoping to run in the first 5 or 6, and we have a bit of a long-term plan, subject to what the owners agree on, of perhaps taking him to the American Grand National in October. Yeah, he's got an American pedigree. He likes decent ground. It's 2 mile 5. It's worth I think $300,000. Gordon Elliott won it last year with Jury Duty, who Lil Rockefeller you'd hope would be better than Jury Duty. So we might give him a break over the summer. Might skip Glorious Goodwood and take him to Far Hills, try and win the American Grand National. But yeah, we'll see what the owners and Neil King decide after Cheltenham. So.
Yeah, very interesting. James, we said there that Global Citizen might have a small chance in the Champion Hurdle. What are you fancying for the race?
I mean, it's quite an open renewal, isn't it? There's sort of lots of horses in there with slight ifs and buts about them. I think Bouvedere probably should be favourite, but I wouldn't be backing him personally at 13-8 or wherever it is. I think at a price, Espoir d'Alen is a horse that I think's still fairly interesting. He's only had, I think it's 8 or 9 runs, so he's still relatively unexposed compared to some of them. By Voidonneau, who's had winners at the festival before, and I think he's won 8 of his 9 starts. And although on bare form, he's probably got a bit to find with the likes of Apple's Jade and Bouvedere. I think he's one going in those unexposed and at sort of 14, 16 to 1. I think he could do worse than that price for him. I can see the race being set up to suit him as well. Obviously, I think Global Citizen probably got off in front like he normally does, won't he?
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping to get a lead, but yeah, we need someone to give us a lead. But yeah, I think there is a bit of a. I think Charlie Parks ran in the race last year, and I don't know if he's going to run again as a sort of a bit of a pacemaker for Bouvedere. So if Charlie Parks does run, we're hoping we might nestle in behind him. And I mean, Global's a very free-running horse, and he's such a slick jumper that he tends to get himself to the front anyway. But just Ben Pauling got David Bass to just drop him in over the first 2 at Haydock the last day before he went to the front, and it just got him to drop the bridle a little bit. And hopefully, if the likes of Charlie Parks and others go off in front, we might just be able to get a lead till halfway down the back or something. That would be useful, and see whether he's good enough to come up the hill. But
who do you think the stiffest opposition is?
Bouvedere is the solid yardstick. I'm actually, although she's an absolute superstar, I watched all of Apple's Jade's races back at Cheltenham recently, and she's never really run her best at Cheltenham. She's exceptionally good, and if she turned up in her A game, she'll be very hard to beat. But I actually would take her on around Cheltenham. Lorena, again, she looks very good, but she's never had to run to this grade before, especially over 2 miles. Especially if the ground's not too bad. I think it's a wide open race. I think Bouvedere is probably the one to beat. And interesting, when I read Nicky Henderson saying that he didn't think he was very healthy last year. He sort of struggled home from Mellon, but he came home not a very well horse, and he couldn't run for the rest of the season because of it. His form of his 2 champion hurdles is probably not good enough to win this year's, but he is the yardstick. I think there's a number of other chances. I was underbidder on Sharjah as a yearling with Harry Dunlop at the Arcana October sale. He's got a savage turn of foot, Sharjah. He's not really done it at the very top level. I know he's won some good races in Ireland, but if the ground wasn't too bad and they went very quick, he's a horse I think with a very good turn of foot. He's a good flat horse, and he's by a sire I have a lot of time for, Dr. Dino. Yeah. I think he could run well. Espoir d'Alen I have respect for. I think he's a 5-year-old though, and I think 5-year-olds don't have a great record in the race. There's lots of horses with chances. The top 3 are the 3 to beat, but I'm going there probably through rose-tinted spectacles, thinking Global will run well. But yeah, I think there's a number that could. I think there's a number of races actually, particularly on the first day. The Arkle, your race, the Arkle, I think it's wide open. The Supreme Novices, I've got Brandon Castle, who's won his three hurdles for Neil King. He's unbeaten. He's going to have a go in the Supreme, see how he gets on. I think that's another wide open race. Will be very strongly run. I think because of the nature of the season we've had, fast ground, equine influenza, a lot of the horses are going in either unproven or rather under-prepped, which I think will probably give us some surprise results. Yeah.
How about the Gold Cup? What's our view on that?
After you.
I've been hugely impressed by Clan des Obeaux the last 2 starts. The King George, he travelled so well, and I thought the way he won at Ascot the last day, I know there was excuses for horses in behind that probably needed softer ground. He won with his ears pricked, and the turn of foot he showed from the last fence, he was just doing a half speed. I think he's looked hugely improved. He hasn't got a great, he's never won, I think, at 5 starts in Cheltenham, and he needs to step up on his Cheltenham form. And there is a sort of notion going around that he's better right-handed. But if he produces his King George or Ascot performance in the Gold Cup, I think it'll be very hard to beat. Unless we get a lot of rain, Native River is obviously going to go out with his heart in his sleeve. Presenting Percy, obviously a very unusual prep. But I mean, the way he's won the Potemps and the way he won the RSA last year, he's very impressive. He's ridden by the genius Davy Russell. if he turns up on his A game and the lack of experience over fences doesn't cost him, he's got to be right in there as well.
Yeah. So you're going to regret saying after you, because I think you fancied Clandezobo.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to have to repeat almost everything you've said word for word. But yeah, I think Clandezobo is probably, I think in my book he probably should be favourite. I think really. I think Presenting Percy could have sort of £7-10 to find on horses like Clandezobo, and he may well find it. But a horse having not run over fences in open company before, it's a big ask, and at the price he is, it's probably a big enough question mark for me. I think I could see the race being set up to suit Clandezobo. Obviously, Native River will go out in front and make a test, and he can just sit behind and travel away, which he does so well, and jump. And like I say, he's got a really good turn of foot for a stayer. And I could see the extra distance bringing out more in him. I know some people sort of question that that might not be up his street, but in my opinion, I think the extra distance will be.
The thing I've loved about Clandezobo is in the King George and at Ascot, he just finished with his ears pricked. He just looks like a horse that's got plenty left. I don't have any qualms about him staying the trip. The only question I'd have is, he's never won at Cheltenham, and I think he's had 5 starts there. And
I think we've seen a different horse this year.
We have, yeah.
So,
I mean, there's just he hasn't done it. But
yeah.
If he produces his King George or his Ascot, well, the same sort of performance, he's got to be hugely hard to beat.
I mean, he's only a 7-year-old, isn't he? So he's still very much on the up. I think Corte's 7 a year. He won his first Gold Cup, and I think with those French pros, that's probably about starting to hit his peak.
I picked out, I'm no jumps expert, but I picked out Road to Respect if he goes for the Gold Cup. I hope he does, because he's a consistent horse, and I think he'd be an outstanding each way bet. Is that right or wrong?
I think right. He's been there, done it before, and he's the sort of horse that every year those hard, consistent, experienced, staying chasers that get the trip, they know how to navigate their way around a rough and tumble Gold Cup. They're the sort of horses every year. There's one of those horses runs a place in the Gold Cup, because they just, some of the younger pretenders don't cope. They probably go faster than they've ever been in their life. The jumping test is pretty severe. Native River will go hard from the start, and he's going to expose any little problem or inexperience or lack of jumping technique a younger up-and-coming horse has. So, the likes of Road to Respect, he's going to be in there for sure.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, we've solved the Gold Cup, the Champion Hurdle, sales issues, and we've learnt some more about you. So thanks for coming in,
That's right.
and thanks for watching the postcast.